Hi folks, this is your MWIS planning outlook with the details into the weekend and beyond. It's an increasingly warm story, but it's one that will get quite complicated as time goes on, as eventually the risk of some thundery showers will re-emerge. For the moment, we've got high pressure expanding in from the south. There's a fairly weak front just off toward the west of Ireland at this stage, and a westerly flow through Wednesday across Scotland that will actually be rather cool across the Highlands, with temperatures only in mid-single figures across high terrain, especially in more northern areas, and that wind will be quite brisk across those northern tops. Some cloud banks will come and go, most frequent across those western mountains, a few local brief showers. Some drizzly bits and pieces of rain may drift on to southwestern coastal areas through the daytime as well. Come further south into England and Wales, and the wind is mostly light, and there's plenty of sunshine and well broken cloud. Some mist patches, some low cloud banks could just be drifting around in parts of Wales in the morning. Some high tops could start off above that. That will generally burn off to give lots of warm sunshine. High pressure will be centred out to the east of us on Thursday. A southeasterly airflow then drawing in some hot air from the continent. Temperatures rising across all areas by this time. Once more, there's a front just off toward the west, and that could just give some low cloud banks around western coastal mountains in Scotland. That could just be around for a few hours before largely dispersing through the morning. A few spits and spots of light misty drizzle too across some coastal areas. Once that's gone, a good amount of sunshine though, and plenty of sunshine for England and Wales, and temperatures feeling very warm indeed. Very warm conditions from dawn till dusk on Friday. The air temperature across the mountains already starting off well into the teens. Generally a dry and a bright day with sunshine, and some high level cloud will be in the mix, and that very locally could just be enough to thicken and produce an odd spot of rain or a brief shower by the afternoon. Most places though likely to stay dry. The hills and mountains free of low cloud, and if the sunshine is around for any length of time it will become a very warm indeed feeling. A gusty southeasterly breeze though across some of the hills, particularly western areas in Wales especially, could just be rather gusty. We've got high pressure stationed out toward the east of us, and that's more or less where it will stay into the weekend. Complications out toward the west though just starting to emerge, and in a rather slack pressure pattern, the idea of popping up some local bursts of rain, even some thunder showers in places. Now these could just end up being very sporadic and hit and miss, and most places avoiding them altogether. So the extended outlook is one of being often dry, still very warm with the air coming up from the south, but just factoring in that risk of a locally heavy shower. Greatest risk on Saturday looks to be further out toward the west, less risk further eastwards, and overall temperatures do stay on the very warm side. Quite a challenging time for forecasting then through the weekend into the start of next week. The atmospheric situation is rather sluggish and slow moving. There's lots of warm and humid air in the mix, and there's just some instability getting to work as well to give that risk of some local showers or even something thundery. Various forecast models have different answers as to how that develops as time goes on, and some models that you may see putting out data onto the various apps, for example, will vary from day to day, and some could look very pessimistic all of a sudden, and then the next time you look at it, it's all gone. And that's more or less the name of the game through the weekend. Basically, I think the idea is going to be just some localised scattered showers, so not immune from catching a local thunderstorm through the weekend, although generally plenty of dry weather, and these will be quite isolated. The wind pretty light, temperatures most likely staying warm, and fairly high pressure is probably going to stay on the scene into next week. Again, one or two forecast models may just look a bit more pessimistic, so we'll watch how that detail unfolds. Time to keep up to date with the forecasts. Low pressure and bits and pieces of activity around the Bay of Biscay just looking as though those drift around and could come back into the mix again in the early days of next week, with that risk of some thunderstorms once more. But again, this gets rather tenuous by the time we get this far ahead as to exactly what position all these various weather pieces have got themselves into. So a complicated and rather uncertain story still going forward into next week. I'll show you this chart, which is the rainfall pattern over 7 days in relation to the long-term averages for this time of the year, and the orange colours indicate lower than average rainfall, which is still broadly across Scotland. The green colours higher than average rainfall, which is generally over the Atlantic and away towards Biscay. So on balance, next week could do pretty well, but again, just that risk of some thunder showers. Once we go further forwards, though, just a hint that the Atlantic weather regime tries to come back in, and that's what we were hinting at in last week's video, with a greater risk then of westerlies, west by southwesterlies, bringing more changeable weather systems in from the Atlantic, drier conditions further to the southeast. And it could be something similar into the second week of July, with low pressure generally toward the north, with a mixed westerly probably across Scotland, drier under higher pressure further toward the south, would be the indication we're getting from that at this stage. In the short term, it's going to become increasingly warm. Do keep up to date with those forecast details, though, if you're planning through this week ahead. That is your very latest. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.